All right, well, I'll get started with some introductions. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Benjamin Chen with the California Lake Management Society. I'm the webinar chair, and our esteemed group of volunteers have put together a really exciting program for this year. Starting with a discussion on harmful algal bloom management. Today we have Carly Nilson and Dr. Karen Odkins. They're with the Freshwater Harmful Algal Bloom and the California Cyanobacteria and Harmful Algal Bloom Network. And so today our topic is talking about some state resources that are available, but this is a three-part series. So we'll, in part two, which is taking place on February 25th from noon to 1, we will be talking about different monitoring technologies. So we're happy to have Phytoxygen, Lake Tech, and FlowCam with one more slot to be announced. And then about 2 weeks later, we have another roundtable, and this one is more focused on treatment technologies. So CPRO, BioSafe Systems, and OASE with one additional to be announced presenter. And so this will kind of be a format we're looking to expand. We're looking in the coming weeks to have a similar roundtable discussion with a three-part program talking about golden mussels. So stay tuned and yeah, check your inbox, and we'll have the recording of today's meeting posted in about a day or so. But without any further ado, I will pass it off to Carly.
Okay, awesome. Okay. All right. Hopefully I am sharing. If not, please let me know. But thank you for the introduction. My name is Carly Nilson. I work at the State Water Resources Control Board, housed down in Sacramento. And I co-manage the freshwater and estuarine harmful algal bloom program down there at the water boards. I'll go into that in more detail. And Karen Odkins is my counterpart at Fish and Wildlife, working in the freshwater and estuarine harmful algal bloom program as well. And she's going to be presenting for the latter half. Okay, so first I just kind of want to orient folks and give you a little bit of the history of how we got here. Don't worry, I'll be quick. This is a very busy slide, and I don't expect you to look at all of it, but I just want to highlight that FHABs have been a growing issue in our state for many, many years. It's not a newer development. They really started seeing persistent FHABs at Clear Lake in the 1970s. And then we had the development of the California Cyanobacteria and Harmful Algal Bloom Network in 2010. Karen's going to talk a little bit more about that, but it's one of the subgroups under the California Water Quality Monitoring Council. And it was really developed and led by tribes in our state. So I just want to highlight the importance of our tribal community here and elevating this issue. And so it was sort of a grassroots effort to start having folks talk at the statewide level about FHABs and how to address them. The water boards actually, and for Karen's position as well, we didn't actually get funding to have a permanent program to address harmful algal blooms across the state until an assembly bill passed in 2019. Which provided that funding and resources for us to have a dedicated program. And I'm going to talk about that in a lot of details. So first, just going over what we're mandated to do with this assembly bill. Our first mandate is to coordinate immediate and long-term event response, as well as communicate those notifications pretty broadly to the public, the counties, the water body managers, which some of you on the call are today. This has been our primary priority at the water boards in terms of allocating our resources. So we spend a lot of energy and effort in terms of making sure that folks around the state know when FHABs are present and how to best protect themselves. And then as funding and resources are available, we also conduct some pretty minimal monitoring and assessment across the state. We were hopeful that we would have more money so that we could have a more robust program, but it's pretty patched together at the moment. We do have some applied research and tool development. I'm going to go over that in a minute. That's some pretty cool stuff we have coming down the pipelines. And then we also provide outreach and education as well as a centralized website. So with all of these mandates and expectations, we were allocated 5 positions at the water boards and 1 position at Fish and Wildlife, which is Karen. And I'm one of the 5 positions at the water boards. And the water boards receive $750,000 annually to support this program. And I just want to highlight that the bulk of that actually goes to our lab contract to support the analyses. So I mentioned that we have 5 dedicated staff, just to kind of orient you to how the organization of the water boards works as a whole. At the start, in the middle, that's Sacramento. I call that the mothership. That's where I work. That's the State Water Resources Control Board. But then we also have 9 separate autonomous regional boards throughout the state. And the value of that is then they can really start addressing some of the more specific water quality concerns for their region. So we have Marissa and I co-leading at the State Water Board. And then we have 3 dedicated staff in green here. Michael Thomas, he covers the North Coast, which is kind of the salmon color. Dana Schultz covers the light blue area, which is the entire Central Valley. It's a massive area for one person to be employed to address HABs. And then we have Sabrina Rice, who does the eastern part of our state. The other names here in black are actually just volunteers through the regional boards. So they help out where they can, but it's really based on if they have time or resources to dedicate to that. And the primary role of these FHAB, we call them FHAB coordinators, is to really help coordinate that event response when HABs are, when we're notified of different HABs across the state. So I did mention that we don't really have a robust ambient monitoring program in the state, but realizing that it's really important for us to start tracking that frequency and occurrence and magnitude and extent so we can really have a broad understanding of the status and trends across the state. That being said, that isn't the case at the moment. Our program is mostly reactive. So we get told of different HAB reports across the state or shared that information from water body managers. And then we're reactionary in terms of going out and monitoring and determining the public health threat or advisory level that we should have for that. So unfortunately, we recognize that that is a gap in our program, and we did develop a pretty comprehensive HAB monitoring strategy for the state in 2021, but we're sort of ad hoc implementing it as resources come our way. But I just kind of want to go over some of the data we do have. So if you look at the map here, this is delineated by county. So, and this is showing how many illnesses we've had reported to us across the state. So you can see that folks are impacted in almost every county across the state. You'll notice that the Northeast region is sort of missing some information. And it's not that we don't think that HABs are impacting people there. It's just mostly that I think there's an outreach gap. It's pretty remote and rural. We don't have any offices in that area, so it's pretty hard to do a lot of targeted outreach. If you look at the bar graph on the right, this is showing you the amount of HAB incident reports we receive each year at the water boards. And I'll go into that a little bit more detail about how we receive those reports. As you can see, we receive in the hundreds every single year. And then just kind of tracking with that illnesses that we get reported to us as well. That's the orange line at the bottom. And so that stayed pretty consistent from 2019 to 2024. So we're talking about what resources we do have available and what we've been developing. So I just want to share that with you all because there's a lot of really cool things we have available to water body managers and counties and other folks who actually want to implement HAB water quality monitoring programs, as well as just have resources available to them to share with other folks. So we have a dedicated portal and we have it housed on the CC Network webpage. So Karen's going to talk quite a bit about the CCHAB Network, so I won't go into too many details with that, but it's our kind of our one-stop shop for all of our FHAB programmatic stuff, because we really want to have it be as public-facing as possible. So on that portal, you'll find a HAB reports map, and I'm going to go into that in more detail, but that's a map that we have for the public, or anyone for that matter who's interested, that they can go ahead and take a quick look before they're recreating a water body to see what HAB advisories we might have in place already there for monitoring. So they can just make informed decisions before they get out there. We also have a ton of forward-facing information for the public, healthy water habits, frequently asked question of what are HABs, how do you protect your pets, what do you do if you have a livestock gets impacted, veterinary resources. It's pretty expansive. So, and we highly encourage people to adapt those resources for any of their web pages, borrow whatever you need. We're happy to provide it to you if you need other copies of it so you can adjust it to your own means, but we just really want to make sure we have the resources out there for folks. We also have information on how we communicate those advisories to the public, what triggers advisory levels, what those advisory levels mean, and how folks should interpret them. And then lastly, and this is probably more catered to the folks in the room today, but we have a lot of resources on like standard operating procedures on actually how to collect those samples, laboratory lists of laboratories across the country that actually can perform those analyses, and other things. So if you wanted to get a HAB program up and running, you could definitely borrow and adapt from our standard operating procedures just to make sure that we're all consistently collecting data across the state. So I talked about some of those standardized processes. I realize these are really small, but this is just to give you kind of a little flavor of like what we do have. So like it gets from the nit and gritty to having a health and safety guide, right? Because having contact with these HABs can have some impacts to some of your samplers that are out there. So it's just a great guide to help educate folks on if they're out there and they are collecting samples, how to best protect themselves, or if they do have an exposure, what the appropriate next steps might be. We also even have procedures on site reconnaissance. So like if you're going out there and you're trying to figure out which sites would be most viable for collecting samples, what to look for, as well as those, as I mentioned before, those standard operating procedures on sample collection. We have two separate ones because not all HABs are the same or behave the same, I guess is a better way to put it. So for those planktonic, like free-floating cyanobacteria that free float in the water column, we often see them in lakes and reservoirs, although we do see them in larger rivers and the back channels as well as rivers. We have set procedures for that. And then we have different procedures for those benthic cyanobacteria that hang out on the substrate. So they're usually going to be attached to rocks on the bottom. Sometimes they can be attached to other green algae, but they behave quite differently. So we have two different procedures for both, as well as ancillary other guides to help guide folks that are out sampling, including visual guides. So we have like a short one and a long one, as well as we have a whole web page dedicated to additional resources. And I'm going to go into that in more detail, so I'll just keep moving along. So I mentioned our forward-facing HAB web map. So this is on the CCHAB portal. It is the repository for all information we ingest at the water boards in terms of HAB reports. So if the public was to go in here and click on a water body, which is identified by one of these icons, they're all color-coded based on advisory level. It pulls up more information as to that advisory and that water body. So it'll give you the location. It'll give you the water body manager if we have it. It'll let the public know when that report was last updated by the water board so they know how recent it was, or if it's been languishing in our database for a while. It also lets you know the current advisory status. So we have different color coding for that. And so if the public isn't really familiar with it, it also then has those like corresponding advisory recommendations, whether it's stay out of the water or stay away from the scummy material, as well as any other details that might help folks make a better informed decision. So it's pretty robust in having like all the parts in there. And I do want to highlight that it's updated in almost real time by our water board staff. So they go into the database, they QA it, and then it gets uploaded into this map. Even if sometimes we only have like limited information, it'll come up as a blue icon and it'll say additional details below. And it may not have an actual advisory to it yet, but it'll kind of at least guide the public as to where we are in the steps of the investigation. And this is somewhat newer. So we have now a corresponding wiki and it pulls a ton of elements from our CCHAB Network portal, but it's really meant for practitioners. So it's more of a guided, systematic way to guide folks that are going to actually get out and do the monitoring. We found that we weren't able to put a lot of cool features onto the HAB portal, so we kind of found a workaround with this wiki. It is also public facing. That QR code will send you right there, but it has different pages. And so there's a page on pre-holiday assessments and partner monitoring. So we do partner with folks for different monitoring programs. As I said, we're implementing our monitoring strategy ad hoc. These are a couple of the ways we're doing it. If you're interested, please go check it out. Check out the page. There's flyers on there. There's more information as to the date ranges and the expectations. But we love to partner with folks. So please reach out. You can also just reach out to me individually. And then from there, we actually have a lot of information as to the different types of monitoring. So I mentioned we have a lot of visual guides, but we have a whole page dedicated to visual assessments. There's links to YouTube videos of like what to see in the field, as well as a lot of our visual field guides as well. There's a whole page dedicated to different field tests you can do in the field if you don't have quite a keen eye to identify the difference between green algae or cyanobacteria. And then it goes as far as like different lab analyses. So we have a whole page dedicated to planktonic, which is, there's some snippets on this slide that you're looking at, just to give you an idea. So it has our full standard operating procedures for collection. It has an abbreviated SOP for collection, as well as a PowerPoint. So we tried to provide the information in as many ways as possible. And then we also have videos. So videos on what it looks like to collect that sample and how you should be doing it for the visual learner. And then lastly, I just want to highlight that we have, we just updated our benthic sampling procedures, and those came out through the CCHAB Network in May of 2025. Yeah. So the benthic HAB monitoring page is really dedicated to all those new resources. We have the PowerPoint presentation of the trainings we did. We have a cheat sheet for folks to take in the field. There's a ton of things in there. There's also videos. So I really invite you to go check it out, and just, you know, on a fun Friday night, you might want to just check out the wiki and see what options are available to you. I mentioned this before, and I just kind of want to give, since I just talked about it, at least let you have a visual. This is our short waterborne cyanobacteria ID guide. This is the 2-pager. I actually have it laminated and I have it in my field kit. It's just a good resource to have, but we have a ton of these things existing on the wiki in our portal. So go do some sleuthing, or if you want to have a one-on-one walkthrough as to the resources we have, feel free to reach out to me. We're always happy to make some time to make sure folks know what's available to them. Okay, so now I'm going to segue. So those were talking about some of the resources. So now I just want to briefly go over how our HAB monitoring, why you're collecting all this data and collecting all these samples, how that actually informs the advisories we present to the public to protect public health. So we follow the CCHAB Network's voluntary HAB response guidance. It's an 8-step guidance. It starts with that kind of visual observation, surveillance, and then you go into actually discovering that you have a bloom present, which then triggers that interagency communication. So notifying the water body manager, the county, if there's a tribe that's associated with that water body, making sure folks know, and then starting to coordinate for that ground truthing if it hasn't already been done, and then that initiates any sampling. The reason we collect samples is because you can't determine cyanotoxins, which is produced by cyanobacteria. You can't determine those concentrations without sending it to a lab. So that's really going to help inform how we communicate to the public and how to protect them when they're recreating out in the water. So we send that sample out for analyses, and then based on the results we get, then we post some, or we recommend some advisory signs get posted, and then we also update that HAB web map I showed you. And then we recommend continued monitoring until the bloom senesces, so we can continue to update the advisory based on what toxins are present. And then once we have the data that demonstrates that the bloom is senesced, then we recommend actually deposting the water body so the public is aware that it's safe to now recreate and swim in it again. So this is just kind of showing you a different way of that same information and how the water boards is sort of interjected into that whole process. So we get a report to us. We have an online reporting system. It's like a 1-page, pretty quick and easy system that anyone can report to us. They can even do it anonymously. The bare minimum request is the lat and the long of where they saw the HAB. And then once we get that information, it gets dumped directly into our database. Our water board FHAB coordinators go in and verify the data, determine next steps. Sometimes they might reach out to the reporting party to gather more information as to where they were, if they have some photos or any other pertinent information. And this is to help confirm that bloom. And then we also reach out at that point to the county water body manager and any applicable tribe and let them know, hey, we have a HAB present. And then that's where we try to coordinate that monitoring. Monitoring can happen from our FHAB coordinators. If they can get out and mobilize and get out in the field, they will. Or it can be working with our water body managers or counties to go out and do the monitoring. We often train folks to get out and do the monitoring, and we can provide actual field kits with like the sample bottle and the cooler and the ice packs and everything you need to get out there. And then from there, we then recommend signage to whoever has the authority to post, whether it's the county or the water body manager. We also have signs, durable signs, like physical signs that we can mail to you to put up if need be. And then we often recommend follow-up monitoring. This is an area that our program is sort of lacking in funding. So we often can fund the initial discovery of the harmful algal bloom and the initial monitoring. But from there, we just don't really have sustainable resources to go out and monitor throughout the whole bloom until it senesces. So that often becomes more of a visual monitoring exercise, unfortunately. You may have seen that there's this little tail end in the lower left-hand corner. We actually have an entire interagency HAB-related illness work group, and it's comprised of folks, including me at the water boards, and then Karen at Fish and Wildlife for any fish and wildlife illnesses or deaths. And then we also have partners at the California Department of Public Health. And why am I forgetting this? Office of Environmental Health and Hazard Assessment. Sorry, that one always gets my tongue tied. But they're kind of our public health agencies. Thank you, Karen. And so they come in when need be, and we all work together to investigate these illnesses. And oftentimes that environmental sampling is really integral to kind of help us determine if that illness was actually HAB related. And any of those determinations that become in that category of HAB related, we actually do report that to the Center of Disease Controls for their tracking database as well. So I have talked a lot about how our sampling informs the advisories and that data, and you're probably wondering, well, like, how does that all work? Great question. This is a lot, once again, to kind of consume in one slide, but I just want to identify that we have different thresholds that trigger different advisory levels. So this is looking at the planktonic, that free floating in the water column, cyanobacteria. And so a caution signage, which is pretty much recommends stay away from any green or discolored water, can be triggered by a visual assessment of a harmful algal bloom or by sampling. Then from the warning and the danger, those can only be triggered by actually having the water analyzed for toxins. And it can range, and you can kind of see from these thresholds, they get pretty high and it gets pretty dangerous. And so like all the way at the danger threshold, we're really recommending that folks stay out of and off the water, because that cyanobacteria can get aerosolized if they're on a speedboat, and they can still have a respiratory exposure in that way too. So these signs all have infographics. They come in Spanish and English, so we really try to make sure that messaging is clear to folks. And then you might be wondering, well, she hasn't mentioned the benthic cyanobacteria yet. Is that like the evil stepchild? No, she's here too. So this is our signage for the benthic cyanobacteria. It's different from the planktonic because it behaves differently. We often see that the benthic cyanobacteria has more severe types of cyanotoxins, more specifically neurotoxins, and we've actually had some dog deaths across the state. So we're very conservative with how we message this to folks because it doesn't take much to have a pretty impactful situation, especially with a pet. So that signage is triggered. We have a check for algae signage, and that's more of just a general awareness, like, hey, there might have been a benthic HAB here in the past, or we might have concerns of it, but we currently don't have enough to be really concerned at the moment. So it's either we have really low SPAT concentrations, and that's just a type of passive sampler that some folks are starting to use as a surveillance tool. So it just absorbs the cyanotoxins, the free-floating cyanotoxins in the water as it passes through. They often use them in rivers and streams. So if those levels get very highly elevated, then we recommend posting that toxic algae alert, or if you're only doing a visual assessment, if the percent coverage when you're looking at the rocks and the substrate in a river reach. We have like standard protocols for this. I'm kind of going over this sort of broad brush, but if you have more interest, reach out to me. But if it's over 15% coverage, then we also recommend that toxic algae alert. Or if you are able to collect a sample, which is a composite sample, so multiple different mat pieces, and there's cyanotoxins present, we also recommend that toxic algae alert. And once again, that's pretty much just recommending that you don't let dogs drink the water or try to eat the mat material, that your children aren't touching it and trying to play with it on the shoreline, and just giving some of those precautionary guidance tips. Okay, so now on to some cool stuff that we've been doing under development. So just want to talk about some of our remote sensing tools that we have available. They're really great for screening and other things. So I'll just dive right in. So we manage a satellite HAB map. You can get to it directly from the portal, once again, the CCHAB Network portal, but it's currently displaying around 250 of our largest lakes and reservoirs across the state. And it's really helping us, it provides us information to see when a bloom is starting to occur in an area. And so then we can go out and start prioritizing that for additional surveillance. We do not issue any recreational health advisories based on this data. Once again, we're only using it as a surveillance tool at this time. But it does include, and I'm going to go into this in a little bit more detail, but it does include trophic level based on chlorophyll. So this displays both chlorophyll A and cyanobacteria. So it's focusing on chlorophyll A and then the phycocyanin, which is the pigment in cyanobacteria. So you can get both of those out of there. And then we also have an API if you want to pull that data directly for your own purposes. And then we also have a connected app that tracks status and trends. And I'm going to go into that in a little more detail. So bear with me. So this is just a screenshot of a HAB map, the satellite map. So if you were to scroll in, once you're in the app and decide to click on a water body, this is the information that's going to come up. So you can actually start looking at individual graphs here. You can look at chlorophyll 7-day, 1 day or 10 day. You can also look at the CI-cyano, which is going to be very specific to cyanobacteria. The chlorophyll A will pick up anything with the chlorophyll A pigment. But you can look at the 1, the 7, or the 10-day max pixel. And if you're looking at the chlorophyll A, now that there's benchmark thresholds, so you can kind of start determining how eutrophic your water body may be. And then we've actually made some changes where now you only need 3 resolvable pixels to have that water body come up on this map. So there's more access to more water bodies now on this. We are relying highly on our Sentinel-3 satellite up in the air. So that's really only looking at 300 by 300 meter pixels. So it needs to be a little bit bigger of a water body at this time. But if you look at the top part of under the Mystic Lake, you can really start see like it has like a timeline of like the levels as it goes through. So you can really start to hone in on like, when is the seasonality? Has it been getting worse? Like, what is that looking like? So for water body managers, especially if it does show up on this HAB satellite map, it's a great thing to bookmark and look at it once a week and just see if like how things are changing one way or the other, because that might help influence either your monitoring or your management strategies. And this was just kind of, I just wanted to show you that you can actually plot both the chlorophyll A and the CI-cyano together. So you can see like if it's, by doing that, you can kind of see if it's more of a green algae bloom or if it's predominantly CI-cyano. So it can kind of help to start you parse that out a little bit as well. Okay, so this is still in beta testing. So we are definitely taking input from anyone and everyone. So please reach out if you want an individual walkthrough. As I said, with everything today, very accessible. Reach out on any of the above topics. Happy to have a one-on-one conversation. But we're pretty excited about this. This is our new application. It's on an R-Shiny app, but it goes through different metrics to look more at the like long-term status and trends of a water body. So you can go into the overview segment here, and that'll just give you additional information as to like, what is this? What am I looking at? How do I navigate? And then you can start looking at data in a regional specific way or in a water body specific way. I do want to highlight that we did go through the exercise of developing a technical advisory committee with like federal and state partners to develop standardized processes for how we're actually ingesting and evaluating remote sense data so that we can have consistent data over the years. So we've made a lot of varying decisions if we were going to use like a 7 or a 10-day max for the data, how much masking we were going to use based on those pixels that are more on that land-water interface. There was a lot of decision points we went through to make sure that we could catalog why we made the decision to analyze the data the way we did. And at the end of this presentation, I'll have some links to the technical document and then also the paper that was published supporting that. So let's get into the tool. So this right here is showing you the regional aspect of this HAB sensing application. So currently you can do region types. You can do like north, central, or south. You can do it by ecoregion. Here I have it by regional board. So this is the entire Central Valley Regional Board data pulled together from 2017 to 2025. Do you want to highlight that this tool is different from the previous one I showed you, and that it's only going to be updated like quarterly. It's kind of for these long-term metrics, whereas the other remote sensing tool is updated daily. So this one, as you can see, has not been updated all the way through 2025, but you can even query by county. And then there's another aspect in here if it's suitable for trend analyses. So we kept the data in here just so folks had access to it, but if it says suitable, that means there was a minimum of 3 pixels in this water body to make it suitable for these analyses. If it's limited, that means there was often less than 3 pixels. I'm not going to go into all the different nuances, but the overview will go over, if you go into the app, the overview section goes over all of this in extensive details. And then you could also categorize it by water body type. So what I want to highlight here is like now it puts this plot up here and you can start to see like what is the frequency of HABs in the Central Valley from 2017 to 2025. And you can kind of see if the bloom detection frequency is going up or going down or staying consistent. So it's really cool in that aspect as well. And then, so I talked about the regional specific aspects of it. You can also look at it in a water body specific aspect, which may be of more interest to you as well. And it will actually compare against other water bodies as well. Like the last tab over here has a water body ranking. So you can see how your water body that you manage may be, how it might be behaving compared to some other water bodies within the same watershed or a nearby watershed. And you can navigate through all of that from those top upper informational section. And so you can look at, as I said, the water body specific. So here I have Hernandez Reservoir, and this is telling you the bloom detection frequency over the years. And you can see from 2024, they had a pretty high bloom year. So it can really inform management actions. And then we also have next to that water body in the red box, there's an environmental data comparisons. That's still a work in progress, but it provides like statewide precipitation and temperature information so that you have some other ancillary data to compare to the HAB data to see like what might have been some drivers or influences. And then lastly, I just want to highlight, I only showed the frequency, but we have different tabs. So you can look at frequency, occurrence, spatial extent, bloom magnitude, and the geography. So there's a lot of different ways you can look at this data. It's not just based on frequency. If you have like questions or in more interest, I guess, in knowing how we calculated all of that, that's all in the overview section. But I just kind of wanted to highlight that you can really look at this data in a myriad of different ways. As well with these plots, you can download all of that data. So if you want to put it in reports or you want to share it with other folks, we tried to make it to where it's accessible for you to share out as well. So I mentioned this before, but if you want more information on like the science that helped develop this app and also influence the updates to our remote sensing tool, you can check them out here. We have a technical report that's on our webpage. And then here's, this is the paper we just published in January, and it's all open access. So we invite you to have some fun Sunday reading if you want. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Karen.
All right. Thanks, Carly. So now that Carly has covered some about the FHAB program and the tools they offer, I'm going to tell you about the California Cyanobacteria and Harmful Algae Bloom Network, CCHAB Network, that Carly has mentioned several times. So I'm one of the co-chairs, one of the 3 co-chairs there, and I'm going to share with you not only about the network itself, but also about some of the opportunities that are available to you through that network. Next slide, Carly, please. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so a little bit about the mission. The mission overall is just to kind of identify and address the causes and effects of HABs in the whole state. And we're doing this through a couple different things. First, we're trying to kind of drive just the advancement of HAB knowledge overall. So that means we're coordinating and evolving this kind of program over time to identify and address those causes and impacts of HABs. We're really focusing on coordination, and so we're trying to foster those kind of relationships and information sharing across California to better address HABs. And anyone can join this, so you guys are all welcome to join CCHAB meetings or work groups, start your own. And another thing that we're really trying to do is kind of work on that information dissemination. So we are trying to share critical knowledge by leading groups. We are doing subject-specific workshops. We're creating public resources, hosting research presentations, and developing management tools, just as some of those examples of what we're doing as a group. Next slide, please. So the CCHAB work group, I think as Carly mentioned, is a work group of the California Water Quality Monitoring Council. So you're going to hear a lot of like work groups and sub-work groups in this talk here. So the council itself works on coordination and making monitoring and assessment cost effective. So they're working on water quality and ecosystem monitoring and assessment. So really doing that collaboration to make our agencies run more smoothly across different departments. And they're really trying to enhance integration of monitoring specifically, and also make data more accessible to the public. So CCHAB is trying to do all of these different things, and you can see all of our different logos around this slide here are the different entities that are involved in leadership in this group of either a work group, a sub-work group of this work group, or of the CCHAB network overall. So that includes lots of different folks, tribal, federal, state, local governments, and you know, you don't have to be in a government to lead. That's just how it is currently. But we welcome all folks, and we do usually have lots of different representation from different types of entities at our meetings. Next slide, please. So speaking of those meetings, we do hold quarterly meetings for the general group. In those meetings, we first start with kind of a state of the HABs, where we have folks from all around the state. Carly talked about those different regional water boards. So folks from those different regional water boards come and present on what HABs are looking like in that region. And then we also have lots of different entities who do HAB monitoring around the state who are also presenting. So more local groups or nonprofits and tribes all are presenting at this kind of state of the HABs that takes up the first part of the meeting. Then we move on and we do there's a new thing we're trying is kind of a themed presentation or group of presentations. And so recent themes that we've done in the last several quarters, we did one on human health and HABs. We did one on cyanobacteria at the land-sea interface, so kind of trying to integrate the ocean folks with the inland folks. Mitigation, we did HAB outreach and communications, which was a really interesting one, and also benthic HABs, where we discussed some of those benthic procedures that Carly was talking about. Next slide. So as I was kind of foreshadowing here, we also have lots of subcommittees. The purpose of the subcommittees there are to create that kind of coordination that I was talking about between different groups. We're trying to fill gaps in the HAB literature in some of these groups. We're trying to learn new skills together that maybe we don't have as a kind of collective HAB community. And then we're trying to learn from within our community too, like what can the people who have a lot of experience teach the folks who are newer to HABs. So all of these are found in our various subcommittees. So we have a couple different active subcommittees, and we have had many others in the past that have created awesome products. But the active ones right now are the Drones and Aerial Monitoring Subcommittee, the Fish and Wildlife Subcommittee, the Instrumentation Subcommittee, and the Mitigation Subcommittee. And you are all welcome invited to make a new one as well. Come talk to me. Our only requirement is that there is other people who are interested in the topic too. So that is always welcome. I'm going to go into each of these subcommittees a little more so that you can see if you are interested in joining any of them. Oh, thank you, Carly. Great. I will start with the drone work group. So drones and aerial monitoring. Oh, thanks for throwing that into the chat, Darren. It's awesome that you've been putting those in. So the drones and aerial monitoring work group, they are interested in inland water bodies, so lakes and rivers, and they are looking at how aerial monitoring can be useful to HABs and monitoring HABs, assessing HABs. And so they're specifically interested in indicators and some of these technical details around it. In 2025, they had a couple different meetings and discussions. So a lot of these work groups are new, I should say, and just started last year. So they're just getting their feet off the ground. So they had some discussions about Lake Tahoe that's already using drones and how they're using drones there, which was really interesting. They also had some discussions around technical and logistical considerations for drone operations and kind of got into the weeds there. And then they also had some discussions about how to actually sample and monitor with those drones. Next slide, please. So in this next year, they're going to be hosting hybrid meetings where they will be hosting those seminars, but they're also going to be trying to do a literature review where they learn about what kind of methods are already out there for drones and monitoring HABs. And I think that should be really cool. They meet every 2 months or so, and you can contact these folks from SCORP, Allie Lee and Jamie Smith, if you would like to join. There's going to be lots of different names up here. So if you can't remember at the end, feel free to just email me, who was that person for this particular group, and I will connect you all. All right, next slide. So the Fish and Wildlife Work Group, its overall goal on the big scale is to assess and address the impacts of HABs on fish and wildlife, but we have kind of a current long-term goal, which is to develop scientific basis for aquatic life thresholds. And so let's kind of like go back in time into your schooling, if you don't remember or know what I'm talking about here. We use water quality regulatory thresholds to protect our various beneficial uses for waters around our state and country. And so what we're trying to do in this work group is essentially lay the groundwork for one of those thresholds where we can kind of support that clean water. And so our goal is to work towards specifically a cyanotoxins aquatic life threshold. And so our kind of team is broken into two groups. We have folks who are actively working on this, and then we have folks who are going to be reviewing our products, just dependent on how much time people have and what their interest level is. Next slide, please. Thanks. To do this, we are first identifying data gaps, and then we are filling those data gaps, and then we are proposing and advocating those thresholds to water boards, which would be the entity that would eventually adopt that. And we're kind of in our early stages here. Next slide, Carly, please. Thank you. So in 2025, we met for the first time and we kind of discussed the initial scope of the project. Due to data that is available currently, we are focusing on that aquatic life threshold and aquatic species. We're focused on freshwater right now and microcystins. We also conducted a literature review last year, looking at some of those dose response studies that exist, and we outlined a paper on and assessed some of the data gaps in the literature. And next slide, please. And now we're going to be thinning that data to be relevant for California specifically. We have been working with water boards to try to understand exactly what they need to create that criteria and make sure we're working with them from the early steps so that whatever we produce is useful. We have been working on writing the literature review, and we are hoping to also get to start applying to grants to fill those data gaps this year. Okay. Next, we have an instrument subcommittee. I think this might be interesting to quite a few of you. So they are trying to connect HAB professionals to learn about HAB-related instrumentation and methods. So they're getting experts learning from each other in that group. They are having folks new to particular instrumentation that are maybe troubleshooting with people who are more experienced. And they're also actually inviting folks from companies who, that actually produce these instruments to come answer questions and help them troubleshoot, and even in some cases provide some feedback for those. Next slide, please. So they, in 2025, had their first meeting, and they've had lots of awesome presentations. You can see some of them listed there in that kind of light orange color. So they had some really interesting chlorophyll fluorometer kind of comparison, a study that was published there. They had a presentation on that. They had some nutrient analyzer in situ kind of applications that they discussed. They had a lot of really cool HAB-related stuff. So you can see some of the list there. They also have created a so I think we're 4 subs in committee. And so that is the Microcystis Visual Index group. And if you're not familiar with the Microcystis Visual Index, it's really big in the Bay Area. Basically, you look down at the water and you look at these different cluster sizes according to a specific kind of rubric that was generated. So they are trying to standardize that practice, and they're also trying to make it more broadly applicable to folks. So that is that subcommittee. On to the next, please, Carly. Okay, great. So that Microcystis Visual Index group is going to be in this coming year. They're going to be doing some methods testing, and they're also going to be doing a training at the IEP workshop that's coming up in March. Byron, if you can find that and throw that link in the chat. If not, I can do it when I'm done. But that's a free workshop that folks are welcome to come to. And there will be more presentations that they will be offering as well. So check that out. If you're interested, contact Emily Richardson. She's at DWR. Or just, like I said, you can reach out to me if you have a specific one in mind. And last but certainly not least, we have the mitigation subcommittee. Also, I assume folks here will be excited about that. They focus on managing and mitigating HABs in inland waters across California. They share and evaluate emerging HAB technologies. They are assessing field applications to reduce HAB impacts and are developing guidance for decision making. So all of that has been really cool, and they've put out some really interesting products. They've been a really long running subcommittee for CCHAB. So, and folks on there are super experienced. So if you have any questions about mitigation, it's a great place to go and just get your questions answered. They meet monthly on the 3rd Thursday of every month from 2:30 to 4, but they only meet March through October because the summers are too crazy for them. But get in touch with Hugh Dalton and he will set you up with their calendar invites if you're interested. Next slide, please. All right, and that's all I have for you. If you do want to sign up for the CCHAB Network listserv, that QR code there is there for you, or that that link, and it takes you to like a form, and you go to general interests, click CCHAB Network, and then you will get in with us. If you have trouble, feel free to email me. And yeah, you can see the Water Board's general FHAB email address that will go to Carly and also her partner in crime, Marissa, at the Water Boards, or you can email me at my email listed here. So thank you so much. Any questions? I don't know. Yeah, we have some time, it looks like, for Carly or I. All right.
Hi, I have a question. My name is Denise. Thanks so much for your presentations, Carly and Karen. That was really informative. Carly, I have a question for you. about the California satellite HAB map that you presented. The chlorophyll A parameter that's on that portal, am I correct in understanding that that is derived from satellite imagery, right? It's not in situ measurements of chlorophyll A?
Correct. Both the remote sensing app and then the satellite tool, that's based on Sentinel-3 data. So it's not in situ. It's all from coming from up above.
Gotcha. And is there somewhere else where I know you mentioned that your team does in-person, it is monitoring as well. Is there a way to access that monitoring data, the in situ data?
Yeah. Excellent question. And I can throw that in the link. I could stop sharing my screen, but we have an open data portal where we have all of our advisory data, historical advisory data available for the public. So I can throw that link in the chat.
Thank you.
I got a question. So as a follow-up to the previous question, is there any movement towards getting higher resolution satellite imagery?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the next step would be to start integrating Sentinel-2, which its imagery can be pretty fine-tuned to almost like a stock pond in a backyard. I will say we have started those conversations with our colleagues at NOAA and US EPA. They've been doing some testings of water bodies, mostly East Coast based. So we've been priming our data for them so that they can start using some California data to test case some of this out. I think the largest challenge with this is that someone has to host all of that data, and that is a lot of data that's coming in. So we have some infrastructure hurdles we need to overcome, I think, still, but it is 100% of interest of the water boards. And I know my program has already started making investments in going that direction.
Okay. Also, on a similar vein, we talked a little bit about drone images. Like, is that in any way, could that be incorporated into your monitoring program somehow?
We're investigating it. I'm actually participating in the drones work group. We have an interest, definitely. We also need to figure out some of the license issues and concerns about public privacy with some of these lands. So they need to be public lands, but we're definitely interested in wanting to go that direction, especially I will say for like the benthic blooms we get in some of these larger river systems. I mean, you can surveil hundreds of miles of river in a day, and that would be the ideal situation. So we're intrigued and interested in trying to get that direction for sure.
All right. If there aren't any more questions, I have one last announcement to make. So this is part one of a 3-part series. Let me pull up my window. So yeah, today we talked, thanks again to Carly and Karen for their excellent presentation on state resources. This is part one of a 3-part series. And so the next 2 parts will be an industry roundtable. So we have Phytoxygen, Lake Tech, and FlowCam talking about different monitoring technologies. And about 2 weeks from that, March 4th, we have a treatment technology roundtable with CPRO, BioSafe, and OASE, with some other presenters to be announced. So we hope to see you there, and keep your eye out for the inbox, in your inbox for the invitation. We added a new feature where you can just directly add the event to your calendar. So if there's other things like that that could help you remember, let us know. We'd love to continue our outreach and continue delivering excellent, informative webinars. So with that, I will thank everybody for their time, and we will wrap up this webinar.